Hello and welcome to Scream Scene, the horror movie podcast where we watch every horror movie ever made in chronological order and then we rank them from best to worst. My name's Sarah.
And I'm Ben.
Thanks for listening to us today. How are you doing, Ben?
Pretty good.
Not too tired from all the yard work we've been doing this long weekend?
No, not too tired. It got a little cloudy today, so that always makes me feel like a little tired, a little like
malaise.
Yeah, but nothing to complain about too much, other than the continuing pandemic that has no end in sight.
Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Zombies rise from the grave.
That's not insensitive at all.
Well, what are we watching today?
Today, Sarah, we are watching Attack of the Crab Monsters from 1957.
Oh, 57, we're in a new year.
That's right. And we're going to be in 1957 for a while. It has a record number of genre pictures released in it.
What's the number?
I don't know.
Oh, you can't just say record number and not have, 100?
I don't know, Sarah.
Okay.
But it's definitely the height of the sci-fi horror monster movie drive-in theater boom. And this movie kind of ended up becoming
prime example?
Yeah, emblematic.
This is Roger Corman's time.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it was mostly the title of this movie that kind of struck a chord as becoming a
emblem.
Becoming a go-to sort of phrase for a stock monster movie of this era.
I will say, and maybe this shows my age and maturity level, but when I hear Attack of the Crab Monsters, I just think of that South Park episode with the crab people.
Oh, okay.
Crab people, taste like crab, talk like you.
Yeah, see, I see that and I think Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, which is a much later film with much more parody in nature.
Yes.
Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. They'll beat you, bash you, squish you, mash you, chew you up for brunch, and finish you off for dinner or lunch.
So, as we've already kind of said, this is Roger Corman.
Yeah.
So we're back to the lower end of the budget scale. And the last Roger Corman picture we watched was It Conquered the World. Mm-hmm. Now, since then, Roger Corman has made 2 films. The first being his female-led Western Gunslinger, and the second being the drama film Naked Paradise, both of which starred Beverly Garland. And Gunslinger had continued Corman's collaboration with screenwriter Charles B. Griffith, who, if you remember, had come aboard for rewrites on It Conquered the World after Lou Rusoff dropped out in order to go to his brother's funeral in Canada. So Griffith and Corman agreed after Gunslinger that they wanted to make another science fiction film together. And so they began working on a project that would become the film Not of This Earth. Realizing, of course, that the picture would need to be paired with another film in order to do a proper double feature, the two created the outrageously titled Attack of the Crab Monsters, which would then come to be the top of the double bill.
How did it come to be the top?
Because at a certain point in production, Corman decided that this was the A picture and Not of This Earth would be the B picture.
Okay.
It was Corman who came up with the title, and he instructed Griffith to write a script by that title that would feature suspense or action in every scene.
Okay.
So either something is happening or the audience feels like something is going to happen in every single scene.
Interesting.
He presented this to Griffith as an experiment. Can we make a movie that has nothing but suspenseful or action-packed scenes? And Griffith joked that what Corman was really doing was just saving himself the trouble of cutting out those scenes later. Instead of, having a bunch of boring exposition that you're just going to cut out of the movie later, just don't write those scenes in to begin with.
Sure. We just watched a movie that they wanted everything to be super excited and pumped up to 10, but then it didn't have anywhere to go. The She Creature.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, Corman wanted to make a movie this time that would just be like nothing but action and suspense. Think of the B movies that we've been seeing and how much of them are based on like how much screen time can we fill where nothing's happening, or it's just like people walking from one place to another or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So that's what he didn't want to have. He got the script from Griffith and was like, no, this needs to be tighter. Like this, we need to cut this down even more. This needs to be shorter.
Okay.
So Griffith took the script back and retyped it out with smaller margins so that it would have a lower page count.
So he did what a lot of first-year university students try?
Yeah, and got the page count down to under 60 pages, and Roger Corman was like, dope, let's do it. The film's budget was $70,000.
That's not bad for a Corman flick.
It is a little lower than like some of his most recent pictures.
Mm-hmm. But he started with like 20,000.
Yeah, like the She Creature was 104,000. And I mean, that wasn't Corman, but that was in the same
wheelhouse.
Yeah, same kind of people. So this was 70,000. And unlike all of Corman's pictures up to this point, this was not to be released by American International Pictures, AIP.
Okay.
This was to be released by Allied Artists, formerly known as Monogram, because Walter Murch, the head of Allied Artists, had sort of noticed Corman's AIP successes and was interested in working with him and brought him on to Allied Artists to make a film called The Undead. This movie, Attack of the Crab Monsters, and Not of This Earth, the second picture that it was teamed up with, were both made and finished and out in theaters before The Undead, the movie that Corman came over to Allied Artists to make, would be completed.
Are we going to watch that?
Yes. In making Attack of the Crab Monsters, Charles Griffith, the screenwriter, had recently seen Jacques Cousteau's film The Silent World, and that really got him jazzed about like underwater photography. So he convinced Corman to let him direct the underwater sequences for $100. And Corman went with that because then that meant he could take that opportunity to schedule filming for Not of This Earth, leaving teaching the actors how to dive and like going and doing all that underwater stuff to Griffith. Despite the fact that Griffith had no idea how to shoot underwater photography or how to do diving or how to teach actors how to dive or any of it at all. But these are the things you got to do when you're directing both halves of the double feature this time around.
Yes.
So the underwater sequences were shot at Marineland, with most of the location shooting happening at Bronson Canyon.
Sure.
Cinematography throughout was by Corman's regular DOP, Floyd Crosby. And the film's lead actress, Pamela Duncan, was not a fan of doing the underwater photography. She was afraid of the water.
Sure.
She thought that she would get eaten by sharks.
Fair.
She didn't like the scuba equipment and didn't feel confident using it.
Yep.
She was a 32-year-old former beauty pageant winner who had gone into acting. She had a very short acting career appearing in small movies and TV through the 1950s. The film's male lead is 29-year-old actor Richard Garland, recently ex-husband of Corman's favorite actress, Beverly Garland.
Are either of them related to Judy Garland?
No.
Did I already ask that?
Probably.
Okay.
So Beverly Garland would be starring in Not of This Earth, the other picture, while Richard starred in this movie. Richard's acting career and his marriage and his life were ultimately all victims of his alcoholism, which would claim him at age 41 in 1969.
Oh, shit.
Also featured in this cast is Russell Johnson, who we previously saw in It Came From Outer Space, and also had a role in This Island Earth, but who would gain pop culture notoriety as the professor on the classic series Gilligan's Island in the 1960s. Paul Blaisdell turned down making the giant crab monsters for this flick because he felt they could not be made for the budget that he would be working with on this picture.
Huh.
Because they needed to make 2.
Sure, that's why the title is plural.
That's right. They needed to make 2 of the crab monsters. And the $70,000 budget was a little bit lower than normal. So Blaisdell wouldn't do it. So instead, a company called Dice Incorporated made the giant crabs.
Really taking a gamble there.
Yeah, they made them for $400 each.
Oh, wow.
They were papier-mâché skins over styrofoam stuffing on an aluminum frame. The claws worked sort of like giant marionettes. They were on piano wire with like guys off stage, like moving them around on fishing lines. And then they had performers inside them who would squat inside them in order to like move the crabs around and operate the eyes.
Wait, if they're paper mache, I'm presuming that these have to deal with water at some point.
The bigger problem was that the crabs would float in water.
Oh, yeah, because it's all styrofoam.
Yeah, and like just aluminum and shit. So in order to get the crabs to actually go underwater, they had to weigh them down with rocks.
I'm sure that that's super safe.
Yeah.
With the performers inside.
Yeah. The title of Attack of the Crab Monsters won the movie a lot of attention before release, particularly from comedians riffing on it. It sort of was the like Snakes on a Plane of its day in terms of like just people making fun of it based on the title before it ever came out. And it sort of became, like I said, emblematic of this entire like sci-fi monster movie boom because the title was so easy to parody. But when the double feature of Attack of the Crab Monsters and Not of This Earth was released on February 10th, 1957, it grossed $1 million.
Well, yeah, it's coming out right before Valentine's Day.
That's right.
You take your date to it.
And that's on the combined budget for both movies of $170,000.
Wow. Just rolling in the dough.
Yeah, so that made Attack of the Crab Monsters Roger Corman's most profitable film yet.
I wonder if that's why he switched it to being the A picture then, because he knew that the name was so ridiculous. Lean into it.
Exactly. Not of This Earth got better critical reception, but Corman believed that Attack of the Crab Monsters was like what was driving the show. People were coming to see that movie.
Yeah, kind of like get them into the seats with something ridiculous and then wow them critically with the follow-up.
Exactly. Corman believed that the ludicrous title and the over-the-top poster were key to getting people in, but he felt that the key to the ultimate success of the double feature, because of course this is back in the days when like a movie's success was based on long-term success too. It wasn't just like, oh, you have a good opening weekend and then who cares if like everybody hates it after that, as long as you make your money opening weekend. Like that economy didn't exist, right? You had to make money the whole time. And Corman believed that the reason why the movie was so successful was because after everybody was in with the ludicrous title, the movie itself was successful because of the all killer, no filler script, basically. Corman felt like that was very, very successful. The like cut to the chase mentality. And it remained one of his favorite pictures of his filmography due to its financial success, such that he would not allow it to be remade later when people approached him for the rights.
Interesting. All killer, no filler. I'm going to hold Corman to that.
Yeah, so we'll see what we think of Attack of the Crab Monsters.
It's not going on the list unless I see someone get literally ripped in half by these crab monsters. Just completely eviscerated, like going through a pair of scissors.
Okay.
Hey, that's what all killer, no filler says to me, Ben. Give me that gore.
Yeah.
What have I become?
So Attack of the Crab Monsters is available on DVD and Blu-ray from Shout Factory. It's streaming on Tubi, and you can find it on our YouTube playlist.
If you would like to find that YouTube playlist, you can go to our website, screamscenepodcast.tumblr.com. You're going to hear a brief musical interlude, and when we come back, we will discuss Attack of the Crab Monsters from 1957, directed by Roger Corman.
See you on the other side, everybody. Welcome back to Scream Scene, everybody. We just finished watching Attack of the Crab Monsters from 1957, directed by Roger Corman. Sarah, what did you think?
All right.
Yeah.
There was, what was it? No, all killer, no filler?
That's right.
That I would definitely describe this film as that.
Yeah, you wanted someone to get like chopped in half by pincers in like the first scene, and you basically got it.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Someone gets their head chopped off.
Yeah, decapitated.
Yep. So it's a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
It makes little sense, but it's a lot of fun.
No, the pseudoscience in this is a whole new level of dumb. And like the effects are very fake, and the cheapness and the stock footage, it's all super obvious. But this movie's like 62 minutes long. So all it needed to do was like keep up a certain level of like fun and like action and suspense and like forward momentum, and it did all of that. So I'm pretty happy with it.
Yeah, color this one a success.
Yeah, this movie does not fuck around. Mm-hmm. Why don't you run us through the plot, Sarah?
So we start with an arrival at an island where the nuclear fallout from Bikini Atoll drifted and kind of landed on this island. And so there is a second research group arriving here to study the effects of this fallout. And it's the second research group as the first group mysteriously disappeared. This group includes Dr. Dale Drewer, land biologist, Dr. Martha Hunter, marine biologist, Dr. Jules Devereaux, who studies bacteria, Dr. Carl Weigand, who is a nuclear physicist, and Dr. James Carson, who is a geologist. And they are also joined by 2 seamen and a Hank Chapman, who is a technician, who are all here for basically demolition, to help the scientists blow things up to get samples and also kind of protect them because the first group went missing, that sort of thing. And as we alluded to when we came back from the break, this group experiences tragedy almost immediately as a deckhand, for lack of a better word, falls into the water as they're bringing supplies ashore and gets his head chopped off.
Yeah, they're dropped off at this island by the Navy. And so this is like a Navy boy who is now headless.
The second tragedy they experience is the plane, naval plane, that dropped them off, goes to take off and then inexplicably explodes.
Yeah, just explodes.
Upon takeoff.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a storm brewing, so they're unable to establish radio contact with the naval base that's nearby. They do note that the last research team here has left a notebook. Now, this notebook was kept by the research team lead, Dr. McLean, and it kind of is like the usual, like, we were doing research, and suddenly leaves off halfway through a sentence as they are talking about this killer worm creature that they discovered.
Yeah, it's your classic, like, clue that you would discover in, like, a drawer in a survival horror game.
That night, Martha hears Dr. McLean's voice saying, "Martha," or rather, "Dr. Hunter, I'm over here, come rescue me," or whatever. I've found research things. So she goes out into the night and follows this voice to a pit. We cannot escape pits on the show. Also at the pit is Dr. Carson. He also heard Dr. McLean's voice, which Martha thinks is a little strange because Dr. McLean was saying, "Martha, Dr. Hunter specifically, I am talking to you."
And this pit was not there.
Yes, this pit is new. They discovered it in the morning because every so often there are earthquakes as new pits and the geology island formation shifts and changes.
Yeah, this island is like changing under their feet. Like it's the fucking Genesis planet. Like it's made of proto-matter. Like it's not stable.
So Dr. Carson is like, "No, I'm going down into this pit. This is where McLean said to go." And as he is descending, he screams and falls, and Martha faints because the line went slack. Now this brings the rest of the team over to investigate, and they're like, oh man, like, he must be dead. And then they all hear Dr. Carson's voice, like, no, only my leg is broken. I'm not quite dead yet. Mm-hmm. So everyone except for Dr. Drewer, Dale, and Martha go to look for Carson. Dale takes Martha back to the house to recuperate. As we cut between the cave team and the house team, there is a crab attack at the house. Now this crab is like giant. You don't fully see it on screen, and it deliberately breaks their radio, as well as like demolishes the lab to eat the lab mice.
Yeah, these crabs are like small sedan sized.
Yeah, like a Mini Cooper.
Yeah.
The cave team is looking for Carson and keeps hearing his voice. They get to where he fell and there's no sign of him, and so it's like, well, that's weird. He must have dragged himself somewhere. As they are going through, they discover a crab and they're shooting at it. No effect. I forget the order of operations, but Dr. Weigand, who's the nuclear physicist, deduces that this is a liquid energy being, like mercury. So mercury is a liquid but behaves like a solid because it likes to, stay with itself. And that's why bullets are going through, because it's not fully solid. Yeah.
Yeah, so what happens is they're like shooting this crab and bullets just go right through it because it like seals up, like the tissue seals up behind the bullet. It's like trying to shoot a pool, like a swimming pool.
Yeah.
Like it's not going to work. And then they kill this crab because they like throw a grenade or something. And instead of like the grenade blowing it up, it like loosens some stalactites from the cave ceiling that fall into it. And because it's impaled, it's dead. But like Dr. Weigand's like, if you took the stalactite out, it would like reseal and come back to life.
Yeah, like that villain from Terminator 2.
Sure. So the explanation for these crabs is that, the island was suffused with radiation from Bikini Atoll. And you know how in electricity you have like loose electrons that pass from like copper atom to copper atom, creating the current. Well, these things just have like loose atoms. And so they are like, as Sarah was saying, they are like liquids, but they're liquids with a constant form and shape. Like as if they're being held together by a crab-shaped electromagnetic field.
Yeah.
And, but they were crabs at one point. But now, because they're liquids, if they eat something, they absorb it into their mass, which is why they're getting bigger, right? So, like, if I pour coffee into water, I now have coffee water that's twice the size. So when they eat people, they not only absorb the mass of the people, they absorb their minds and memories as well.
Yes. So, like, this crab is telepathic, and that's why they've been hearing McLean's voice and Carson's voice. A little footnote, really hand note here, is during them going through the cave, there is a little bit of a cave-in, and Dr. Devereaux's hand gets cut off by falling rocks.
Yes.
Just to kind of show, like, how sharp these rocks are. And these are the same rocks that impale the crab. So he loses his right hand. Because they impaled this crab, they are able to get a sample, aka they take off a big one of its claws. And that's how they make these discoveries of, like, mercury, liquid, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, how they figure out its, like, atomic structure and stuff like that. And
this is when they also discovered that the crabs seemed to have been afraid of electricity at this point. And the reason is if they come into contact with electricity, they just immediately turn to ash.
Yeah, because the crab energy beings are negatively charged. So if you hit them with a positive charge, they just disintegrate.
Of course. I learned that in high school, Ben.
Right. Also, the crab that didn't get impaled by the cave-in is pregnant.
Yes, as they are leaving after impaling the first crab, they see a second, and she has like, you don't really see it, but they describe, she has like the eggs underneath her and stuff. So she's about to have like a ton of little crabs.
Yeah, Martha, in her capacity as the marine biologist, is able to be like, she's pregnant. So we know that like it's trouble. We can't just like leave these telepathic colony intelligence mad-eating crabs here.
Yeah. Also, they're stuck here. Like, no one's coming to rescue them. So.
Yeah.
Now, more pits are being made as the crab builds tunnels underneath and kind of changes the formation of the island.
And okay, so here's the other thing. The crabs aren't just, like, tunneling with their claws. Because they're energy beings, they can, like, zap the ground like as if they can like fire like radiation from their claws. We never see them do this, but this is like, we know that this is how they're tunneling because the earth is glazed, like when you like nuke a place and it just like turns all the earth into glass. And so like the crabs have like energy beam powers, which presumably is how they blew up the plane.
Yeah, I guess. They never really explain what happened.
And they're fucking around with the geology of the island specifically to trap the scientists.
Yeah, make it so they have nowhere to run.
Yes.
Now, the sailors, the two seamen, have been staying, like, in a tent on the beach to, like, watch out for things. They get attacked and killed.
That seems like they got, like, a raw deal. Like, the scientists are all staying in this, like...
cushy house.
This like Miami beach house, up a hill, and they're on like in a tent at the beach.
But most of the dynamite that they had was in this tent, so that's all been destroyed. So they have like very little demolition equipment left. Has been said, the entire island's formation is being changed, which has the byproduct of oil being discovered. Yeah, Dr. Weigand and Dale are walking along, and Weigand is like, look, oil! And you can just hear, like, in the academic's mind, like, we'll be rich! I won't have to worry about getting tenure or publishing anymore. And so they're like, okay, well, let's go track down where this oil is coming from. And Dale is like, but the crabs, Weigand. And Weigand's like, yeah, but, like, we hear them clicking and clacking before they get to you. It's like a rattlesnake. It'll be fine. Well, it's not fine, because they follow the oil to caves where Weigand meets his end.
Yeah, he's killed by a crab.
Well, so they had devised a Scooby-Doo-esque trap to electrocute the crab. And Weigand steps into it as he is trying to get away from the crab, so he electrocutes himself, and it's like he paralyzes himself, so he's just laying there with a horrified look on his face as the crab comes up to him and devours him. Then they start to hear his voice telepathically. So the people who are left are Dale, Martha, and Hank. Now, Dale and Martha, it's been made clear that, like, they aren't really engaged yet, but like they're engaged to be engaged.
Yeah.
They've been like college sweethearts this entire time. They're going to be the breeding couple. But Hank, who has just met Martha, finds this time, right as Weigand dies, that this is the right time to kind of shoot your shot and say, hey, Martha, I think you're real swell. And if we get off this island and it's just the two of us, maybe you can think about me, even though I'm not a doctor.
Yeah. I saw you in a bathing suit today, so I'm thinking that, like, maybe you and me.
So at this point, the island is just some rocks with a radio tower. And Hank doesn't get his happy ending because the crab monster comes up onto the rocks as they are trying to get the radio tower to work, and Hank manages to get the tower electrified so it blows up the crab, but it also blows himself up. So he sacrifices himself, leaving Martha and Dale to likely starve or die of thirst before the Navy comes.
Yeah, they're just on the, like, one rock that this island is made of left. I mean, they've got lots of crab meat.
Yeah, but, like...
no butter, though.
No butter. That's the key, Ben. Also, like, it's, like, radioactive.
Fair. But yeah, like, the crab is dead, Hank is dead. and then like the two of them just like hug, and then it's like the end.
Yeah. Which again, all killer, no filler.
That's right. This movie's fucking great, Sarah.
It's bonkers.
People die. There's a decapitation. A guy loses his hand. The crabs are telepathic colony intelligences because they absorb the memories of the people they eat. But it's not like there's one crab that's like McLean and one crab that's like Weigand and one crab that's Carson. It's like there's one crab that's like three dudes and another crab that's like another three dudes, and they all still like maintain their personalities. Like Devereaux, when he gets eaten, is still like all like, I'm the French one. Like it's
I was gonna have to figure out what to do with my left hand.
Now I have a claw and a pincer. Like it's wild.
Yeah, it's like the crab creatures are good-ish. They just look like giant crabs, and so that's done fairly all right, except their eyes.
Yes.
Their eyes are like these cartoon eyes that have eyelids, and they just look so tired.
They're not on stalks. They're just like on the face of the crab.
Yeah, if you see the poster, you get a pretty good idea of what it actually looks like, and it's so cute.
If you Google search these crabs, like you'll get like stills of them, and it's like they look pretty bad. I will say that Corman does a pretty good job of like shooting them quickly and like quick cuts and like not showing like the whole crab in one shot, or like keeping them moving fast or whatever, so that you aren't like being given big long shots to see how crappy these crabs are. I think he's like been learning, like he's learning lessons. Like we've said this before, but that's kind of the cool thing about these Corman movies is like seeing him like get just like a little better each time.
Absolutely. Yeah, these crab creatures were pretty good.
Yeah, for like the fact that you know that they were made for $400 each. Like the thing that is the best thing about this movie is that it moves so fast that like anything that you have a problem with is traded off by the fact that like stuff's always happening.
Yeah, like just don't think about something for too long.
Right, and the movie's not going to give you the time anyway.
Exactly.
There's always something like weird enough or wild enough going on to kind of hold your interest. Like someone's hand just got like knocked off by a rock. Like it's and you know, and the level of violence is pretty like shocking for a movie of this like time, right? Have we ever had like a decapitation and like a hand get chopped off in like the same movie? Like,
no.
You know, by the time you have thought, wait, how the fuck do these crabs work again? The movie's over, right? And the ideas are so wild. It's so crazy that like, you know, what are you going to do? Say like, that's not how crabs work? Like, no, like the guy like finishes being like, yeah, so they're like liquids because of radiation. And you're like, okay, and you just go with it. Like the ideas are so crazy.
Right after you get like gore, like
right.
You get like someone's hand getting cut off, you know?
Right. Well, and it's just like the pseudoscience isn't close enough to anything resembling reality that you can even like poke holes in it.
Yeah, it's not like crabs are 8-legged creatures and you're like, yep, okay, who are made out of liquid. It's like, wait, that's not true. It's like, no, all of it is farcical.
Radiation just did it. It's fine.
Don't worry about it. I will say that like the only problem with this no filler approach is they have to keep making up new reasons to wander. Case in point is the oil.
Right. Like why do you keep going into the caves?
Exactly. Right. So it kind of makes people have to take stupid risks. But again, if you don't think about it too much, then like you're fine.
And yeah, and again, the movie doesn't give you the time. It's an hour long. So you just watch it. It's just a fun little ride. There are exposition scenes, but like
they're done so well.
Yes. They are very quick and like not labored.
And integrated into how they are like entering the island for the first time.
Right.
Like we pretty much get a scene where Hank is telling the seamen who each of the doctors are.
Right.
And we're getting that voiceover as each doctor happens to walk by the camera. So it almost feels like, you know, when you get like a heist movie and it's like,
right,
this dude's demolitions, this dude hacks open safes.
Right.
So it just, I think is an example of the constant forward movement.
Yes, absolutely. Pretty much my only complaints about this movie are the ending is almost too sudden. Because, like, I did go, like, wait, are they going to get rescued? Like, did they get a message off before the radio was destroyed? Like, are they just going to die on that island? Like, am I just supposed to ignore the fact that, like, they're alone there? So the ending's a little too sudden. The love triangle comes out of nowhere and feels a little bit, like, tacked on.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, like, because we're down to 3 characters, so now we need something for them to be talking about. So I guess we'll just, like, throw in...
Well, I think it was so you would care about Hank
Right.
sacrificing himself.
And this is the thing, though, is that, like, Hank dying isn't interesting, is the problem. Like, they resolve the love triangle in the least interesting way possible, because it's like, oh, yeah, here are 2 people who've been in love this whole time. Now there's a third person who kind of, like, wants to get in on that. But he died.
Yeah.
So there's no, like, conflict there, right? Like, it would almost be more interesting if Dale died, because then that would indicate, like, a change, right? And then the only other issue I really have with this movie is, like, Martha is probably one of the weaker female characters we've had in a Roger Corman movie so far. Like, she's fine. She's about on the level of, like, heroine from, like, a Gilman movie where it's like, you know, she's a scientist in her own right, and, like, she
Does stuff.
you know, does some exposition and, like, whatever. You know, she's fine. She's not, like, singled out by the crabs or anything, like, you know. But she doesn't have quite the, like, strength or, like, interesting character traits of another Roger Corman, like, heroine. That was actually something that was kind of missing from the movie overall, was, like, the sort of weird, interesting human qualities of characters in previous Corman movies. But that's almost because, like, this movie's like a fucking slasher movie with giant crabs. Like, the movie's like, no, here's 10 characters, and, like, one of them is going to die every 5 minutes for the rest of this movie.
Yeah, more like a Pincher movie than slasher, because
Sure.
they don't slash.
Yeah, got it.
You mentioned in the context setting how they really wanted every scene to feel suspenseful if there was no action. And I think they pulled that off mainly because of the music. The music worked really well with maintaining that suspense. It also helped you gloss over the more ridiculous parts of the movie.
Sure. This is definitely one of those movies, though, where, like, the ridiculous parts add to the fun rather than sink it.
Yeah. Yeah, and, like, there's no one turning to the camera to be like, what? That's ridiculous. But you also, like, I think the reason it kind of works is because no one's trying to be like, no, really, this is science.
I think, you know, you'd think that the most audacious thing would be trying to pull off giant crabs for $400 each, but probably the craziest thing in this movie that it tries to pull off with its nothing budget is the idea that the island is, like, disintegrating under their feet.
Yeah,
the way
so much stock footage.
Well, yeah, there's a ton of stock footage of, like, earthquakes and rock slides and things like that. But, like, the way that they try to indicate that, like, the island's getting smaller or, like, being destroyed is, like, the first time, let's say, they leave the house, they have to, like, go down a path all the way to the beach. And then the next time that they go down the path, and then there's, like, a pit where it just sort of drops off. And then the next time they go out and there's just, like, the beach is right there outside the house. And there's no, like, really, like, scenes of, like, the island coming apart in such a way. Like, you don't see the pit get formed, because all the pit is it's just, like, a real world, like, cliff in, like, Bronson Canyon somewhere that they just went to and pretended like this is a brand new pit. It's like going to the beach and being like, oh my God, the island's fallen into the ocean. And it's like, no, this is just the beach that has been here the whole time.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of a clever way to have the B movie issue of walking everywhere or retreading steps, like going from A to B to A to B again, because that route is different every time.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Because the island's falling apart.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of a hilarious, like, low budget
Lamp shading.
Yes. Well, yeah.
Ben, you mentioned this as we were watching the movie. I guess American soldiers who served in the Pacific, when they were on islands, were often beset by crabs.
Yeah, this comes up like early on when like they first come to the island and there's some like regular crabs that aren't giant crabs. And one of the characters, I think it's Hank, he like tosses a rock at a crab. And someone's like, hey, why are you doing that? And he's like, oh, I hate crabs. They're gross. And like, you know, the seamen are like, yeah, crabs will eat you alive, like kind of thing. And yeah, it was the problem was that like American soldiers would get like stationed on these like podunk nothing Pacific islands. And then like crabs would come and like attack their camps because their camps were like full of like food and stuff, right? And so they were like these gross pests. And so one of the things you have to understand when you watch this movie is that there was like a generation of men coming out of World War II who like, I don't want to go so far as to suggest they had like a phobia of crabs, but for whom like
they already had kind of a hatred of them.
Well, like, yeah, for whom like crab would equal like weird, like, you know, it's like take a rat, right? Like a pest that's going to come after your food and is kind of gross. Then, you know, give it the alien armor of a crustacean and then like the fucking 8 legs of a spider and the pincers of a scorpion, and then be like, and now here's millions of them and they're super hungry and they'll come for you in the night or whatever, right? So like, and suddenly crabs are scary. I think we don't really think of crabs as scary inherently because we just sort of see them like waddle around and go like, that's goofy. They're goofy. So I think that's an important like context to understand of like, why would you make crabs into the monster in a horror movie?
Yeah, so I thought that was kind of neat to note. The other thing you noticed during the movie is that Dale looks like a combination of Timothy Dalton and Gary Cooper.
Yes, which weirded me out.
And Hank looks a lot like Josh Charles, who played Will Gardner on The Good Wife, if that name gives more recognition to people. So much so that it's distracting.
Yeah, Hank is played by the guy who goes on to be the professor in Gilligan's Island, which makes all the scenes in this movie where he has to like fix the radio or like rig up the electric trap for the crabs or whatever very funny to me, because he's
absolutely
on an island here rigging up bullshit nonsense.
Just fix the hole in the boat.
Right. Overall, this movie is great fun. And it won't bore you. Like, it keeps stuff happening for the 60 minutes that it's on. Like, it does not wear out its welcome. It's a fine way to spend an hour.
Yeah, I will say when you were first describing their approach as wanting there to be a lot of action, I was worried, like, will this end up being a horror movie? It's definitely a horror movie.
Oh, yeah.
Like, even without the decapitation within the first 5 minutes, like, it's a horror movie.
Yeah,
100%.
everybody dies.
Yeah, except for the breeding couple.
If they get rescued.
If they get rescued. They are presumed dead. So, yeah, I think this definitely goes on the list. I have kind of a range of around 7 spots.
Oh, thank God. I hope it's inside mine.
Okay, well, what is yours?
So I had a really hard time coming up with a range for this movie, Sarah.
Yeah, it's quite something.
Because the trap I fell into is like really liking this movie and enjoying it and liking that it was just like all killer, no filler, and that the crabs like eat people and decapitate people and people get their hands chopped off and there's blood and there's gore and planes explode and like an island is destroyed. Like there's always something happening, and I enjoyed it. And so many of the movies we watch for this show don't have enough things that happen in them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that put it like head and shoulders above all these other movies. On the other hand, this movie looks like, you know, if I could get someone I know who's like really crafty to like make me a big paper mache crab, I could like go to like Lake Bonavista Park and like shoot this movie in a weekend with some friends, and it would look just as good as this. So it's like, how do you balance the fact that like this movie knows how to overcome its limitations by making a movie that isn't going to bore you, with the fact that like there are tons of movies on this list that have like less stuff that happens and aren't as like interesting to watch, but are much better made. How do you balance that? So I looked for our last Corman movie, It Conquered the World.
Oh, I started there as well.
That's sitting at 48. And I think It Conquered the World is much better than this. It has a better script. It has better like ideas. It has better performances from the actors. Like none of the stuff in this movie that I just said is terrible. But it's sort of, you know, like the difference between a good episode of Star Trek and a good like Godzilla movie. Like they're different. Like there are different inherent quality levels there, you know?
Sure.
So I thought It Conquered the World was probably better. So I started looking beneath that, and I was looking for, you know, okay, where do I hit a point where it's like I stop seeing movies where it's like, this is definitely better. So my ceiling became number 64, Revenge of the Creature. Because Revenge of the Creature is exciting. And below Revenge of the Creature is like House of Dracula, House of Frankenstein, Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, all the Monster Rally movies, none of which are as exciting as you want them to be. Mm-hmm. They just kind of are there, and they never feel like they're doing enough with their premise as they should, right? Like House of Dracula is a movie that has Dracula, the Wolfman, Frankenstein's monster, a hunchback, a mad scientist, all in one movie, and you watch it and you're like, and that's the movie you chose to make? Whereas this is a movie called Attack of the Crab Monsters, and
you get that.
You absolutely. And it turns out the crab monsters are telepathic and absorb the intelligence of the people they eat and can shoot fucking radioactive lightning from their claws and like all kinds of crazy shit. So I figured like, okay, I think my ceiling here is Revenge of the Creature, because above that you have like It Came from Outer Space and Amazing Mr. X, movies that are probably better. And then I tried to find a floor. You know, what is this movie definitely better than? And that's where I really started to run into that trouble of like, I enjoy this movie more, but there are movies that are much better made than this.
Sure.
And so I ended up with my floor all the way down at number 137.
That is a huge range, Ben.
Exactly. Because 136 is The Unknown, which is a really well done Todd Browning movie that's just really weird and gross and disturbing, and it's like, why would anyone make this movie? And beneath that is a movie, The Invisible Ray, which is about Karloff wanting revenge on Lugosi, or Lugosi wanting revenge on Karloff.
I think it's Lugosi on Karloff and using a
he
ray
has a
to
ray
do
gun.
it.
He has a laser gun that melts things, and that should be cool. And somehow that movie is super boring. So I was like, this is definitely better than that. So I ended up with this massive shotgun of a range, and I had no idea what to do with this movie. So I'm hoping that you can help.
Okay, I think I can.
Okay.
So, like you, I started by looking at It Conquered the World. Also, like you, I considered It Conquered the World better. So then I looked down, and I found my floor first.
Okay.
My floor is right in around these Monster Rally movies, House of Dracula, House of Frankenstein, Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. And the reason for that is those movies carry a lot of baggage, like especially Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. And they are really bogged down by it. Out of these, House of Dracula does the best with dealing with all of that baggage. Thinking about the way that they handle that compared to the exposition and setup and everything that's done in Attack of the Crab Monsters, I think Crab Monsters is done better.
Sure. Crab Monsters is always moving forward. Even if someone is like explaining to you what the crabs are or what happened to the first team that came here or whatever, it never feels like the movie has to stop to make those explanations. It feels like the movie's still moving forward.
So my floor was 65,
okay.
House of Dracula, which is right below your ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just mention that my ceiling was The Black Room, another movie that was quite tight, but is just so much better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so my range was 58 to 65, but I think given your ceiling and my floor, we could probably just slot this in underneath Revenge of the Creature and above House of Dracula.
I think that makes total sense.
Yeah.
All right. Then coming in at the new number 65 is Attack of the Crab Monsters from 1957, directed by Roger Corman.
Our first film from 1957, and definitely not our last.
No.
If you would like to see this list, you can go to our website, screamscenepodcast.tumblr.com. There you can find links to the many episodes we've mentioned today, as well as our appeals box. If you would like to contest this or any other ranking, you can drop us a line through our Ask box on Tumblr. You can reach out over email at screamscenepodcast@gmail.com or reach out over Twitter @_screamscene.
Scream Scene updates every Wednesday on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or just, wherever you like to listen to your podcasts if you subscribe through our RSS feed. If you'd like to help the show out, you can do so by leaving a rating or a review on one of those services, by sharing the show with your friends or over social media, or by heading over to our Patreon at patreon.com/screamscenepodcast, where you can become a patron of the night for as little as $1 a month. Mm-hmm. Patrons at the higher levels of $5 and $10 get access to regular bonus content.
Speaking of bonus content, I have been thinking about revisiting some of my earliest encounters with Gothic fiction and media. So coming up this month at the $10 level, there's going to be a review of the 1993 The Secret Garden coming up from me. And part of that is because I recently watched it for a guest spot I'm doing on a podcast called Why This Film, where you revisit movies from your childhood.
Very cool. So once again, that's patreon.com/screamscenepodcast.
So what are we watching next week, Ben?
Well, next week we're watching the other half of the double bill.
Oh.
So we'll be watching Not of This Earth, directed by Roger Corman.
Sure. This later half was more critically acclaimed, right?
Correct. Yeah,
okay.
It's generally considered to be the better movie, but Attack of the Crab Monsters is considered to be the reason why the double feature was financially successful.
That's fair, Well, we will see you next week, Creatures of the Night.
Bye.
Bye.